when you get a phone or a device, you get access to the whole world,
Yeah.
but the whole world gets access to you too.
Welcome to The Keys to Your Legacy with your host, Elijah Keys.
Hi, thank you everyone for joining us today on The Keys to Your Legacy. This is a podcast devoted to trust and estates issues. Today, I am joined by a cybersecurity specialist. We'll talk about how that relates to trust and estates. But first, I'd like to introduce you to Matthew Kaing, who I've known for a couple of years now. Matthew, thank you for joining us today.
Hey, Elijah, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
I'm glad that you are here. Are you at your house? I mean, it looks like you have
No, I'm in my office here. We're right by the airport
Oh, you
in
are?
San
Yeah.
Jose.
Yeah. I was reading a little bit about your background. I mean, we've known each other for a while. We've talked in different groups, but I saw that your family's from Cambodia. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
So I was an immigrant. I came here when I was about 11 years old. And I survived the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia. And it made me really appreciate a lot of stuff that I didn't have over there. Basic survival needs, just food, clothing, and shelter that we all have here, but we somehow, I think, including my kids, just take advantage and don't think about it.
Yeah. I think the proper word that I think of is they take it for granted, right? And I'm not an immigrant myself, but my family are. So my grandparents, and they were just incredibly grateful and hardworking for what they had. And now some people in my generation aren't so grateful, right?
It's just, you don't think about the things that you're just given to when you're born until until it's taken away.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, it's basically understanding what true want is, right? Or manufacturing want in your own life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for joining us. Um, tell the audience a little bit about cybersecurity. What does that mean?
Yeah. So the term cybersecurity, it's somewhat like new to a lot of people in some sense because cyber has always been this, I would say, vague thing that people think that doesn't happen to them. It's like it's outer space, right? And the term that we use, cyber, in terms of security, is always something that everybody, it's almost like, think of it, if you can relate that to physical security. You protect your home. What do? You lock the door, and you lock your windows, you put in maybe a alarm system. And some places have video camera to protect their home as well. And you have security patrol. If something happens, you get somebody to come to your home if it goes off if you're not home, right?
Right.
For cybersecurity, it's more protecting your personal asset, your digital asset. That includes your identity, what you have access to, your email, your credit cards, your social security information. And if you happen to be a business owner, you have access to employee data. You have access to confidential information about your client. Those are the security that you're trying to protect. You want to protect those assets because in some ways, people, including your employee and your business, depends that you're going to keep their information safe and secure.
Right. Right. This isn't something that you're new at, right? I mean, you've been doing this for a long time.
Correct. So when I got into the US, one of the biggest challenge I had was learning English. English was ESL, is English is secondary language for me.
It's not easy. It is not easy at all. No.
So the easiest thing for me was math. I can understand math. It's binary, it's zeros and one. And computer just happens to be a lot easier to understand than English and writing paper. So
now you and I differ in that way, because I became an attorney because I'm not very good at math. And then I became a tax attorney and I had to become good at math. So yeah, it's kind of backwards, but okay. I'm sorry. I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, it's interesting because I levitate towards things that is easy for me to understand. And English was grammar and all these spelling. I was like, this is complicated for me. But trying to make a technology, a computer work was much easier to understand. So when the personal computer came out, I go, man, let me see what I can do with this. And I started playing with computers. And that was back in high school. And I started learning how they work and help people that are around me. Hey, how to use a word processor to write up term papers.
Yeah. Nowadays, it's how do you use Chat GPT to write your term paper? But I
I know.
understand that. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a different story now, right? But I've been doing this since high school. And then if I look at back, I've been running eSudo for 23 years. And plus going back 7 years, I was working for a company like Cisco Systems before I started running a business. So it's like 30 plus years in the IT industry.
Right. Right. Now, you and I have something in common because out of high school, I actually trained as a C++ programmer and I worked as an IT guy for about
No
a year.
way.
Yeah, I did. I did beta testing on gaming systems and beta testing on network systems. And so I'm not very good at it. Right. And I certainly didn't stay in that industry, but I have enough exposure to be dangerous.
Gaming is one of the reasons why I started. Like, I go, I can play computers games. That's why I got intrigued by computers.
For sure. Yeah. Well, I noticed here, I didn't know this about you until today when I was reviewing the notes for today, is that you wrote a book about this.
That's correct. So one of the books that we wrote is Online Security and Awareness of Why Employee is Your First Line of Defense.
Okay.
And this book is something that I find that in every businesses, you have to be mindful that if your employees are not trained and not understand the risk that they're letting the hacker into your network, they're the weakest link in your business. And they're also the most crucial first line of defense for your company. And that's why I wanted people to understand, like, you have to help your employees make security as important as running your business, because if your business is compromised, it could mean the employment is good. Your business is gone and the employment with you is gone as well.
Yeah. So let me tell you a story. Okay.
Okay.
So one day I was in court. This is about 2 years ago. And I got an email from my paralegal that said, I think someone hacked my email. And it happened at about 7 a.m. that someone had gotten access to her email because she had clicked some links and they tried to get access to our entire system, but everything had been dual factor authenticated, meaning that you enter your username, you enter your password, and then you have a third way of authenticating. But the email didn't have that yet, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And so they got access to it. They tried to get access to all of our client files, but they couldn't. They didn't get access, but they did get access to the emails. And within 20 minutes, they had sent 10,000 emails to attorneys all around the country. And those attorneys, those IT professionals at those law offices told Microsoft that my email address, at this specific email, was now compromised. And it took us a week to get it up. She was down for an entire week. And we had to prove that it was valid. And the very first thing that we did was set up password authorization. And then we went through this extensive process. And I talked to you about this quite a bit. Yeah. The extensive process to actually improve everything. But it sucks.
It does.
It's horrible.
And the reality is that until something like this happens, it's never top of mind, because the priority of most businesses is not like, how do I secure my email? No, it's like, how do I keep my client happy? How do I get more business?
Right. All those things come behind the scenes and there's no real value to you, the business, right? Yeah. Well, I want to tell you that most of my listeners are probably not attorneys.
Okay.
They're probably general individuals. I don't want to say general individuals, but maybe they would be people who might come to an estate firm or might come to a financial firm and ask for advice. Yeah. And so the level of protection that they need, is that different from the level of protection that a law firm needs?
So that's a good question. And I often talk to individuals that are home users or business owners that somehow work from home and they use computers that maybe not managed by us. One of the first things that I find is most of them priority convenience over security. That
well, sure. So, I mean, that makes sense.
And we all do that, right? I understand why. So a few of the things that I would say for individual, pay attention to what is important to you, what data that you feel like crucial to you. Like, for example, if you are going online banking, you need to figure out, okay, how are you logging into that? Do you just have to go to the browser and log in without any like you mentioned, two-factor authentication or two-step verification? If that's the case, you need to say, okay, what happens if someone else gets access to your data or to your bank account? It's very common for people. You mentioned you use Chrome browser earlier, that they save a password in their Chrome browser and it automatically fills in that form when you go to a website.
Yep.
And so imagine if a hacker or somebody gets access to your computer, they don't have to do a lot of work. It just fills it out for them. They just get in to your online account.
Now, I saw on your website that you actually offer free, what are they called? Security procedures or security standards. People can just download them. I didn't go to your website, but I went to a different website to look at those. And one of the standards that they recommend is to set up a password manager. So that's what my company uses.
Yes.
And nobody uses the Chrome browser to save passwords. They use the password manager, which requires a secret code and all this authentication. It's very hard to get in. It's
much better to do. But most people, by default, Chrome or Edge just automatically, even Safari, if you're on a Mac, it says, hey, do you want to save this password you visited? And most people are like, sure, why not? It's convenient.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, so you mainly provide services to businesses, right?
That's correct.
But this is a podcast about trust in the states issues. So how is cybersecurity about estate planning? How are they related?
Sure. I often advise people that whether you're doing estate planning and stuff, you probably have to file taxes. You get a lot of information. And those information that you collect, whether it's a W-2 or tax return, that information is either saved in your email or downloaded into your computer. Now, are they protected in any way? If somebody gets hold of your computer, can they just open up and says, oh, there's your tax return, there's your Social Security, there's where all the bank account information. If you file a tax return, sometimes they ask you, okay, what do you want to deposit your return into? And oftentimes people who file taxes or other things, even the CPA will send them an email unencrypted to the users like, oh, here's your tax return. I'm like, you're not encrypting any of this. You're just sending it to me. And I want them to realize that those are what matters to a lot of people, is this information that they have to protect or they have to secure somehow.
Yeah, the hardest thing for many people to look at is to see the consequence of when something bad happens, because most people don't think about what's bad until something bad happens, right? And cybersecurity is definitely a huge issue. Yes. So somebody's Social Security number being compromised, that email from that CPA contained their personal Social Security number.
Yes. And then they also, the other thing is phishing email, whether you are an everyday, whether you're getting a phishing email. So just for clarification, phishing email is an email that's sent to you to impersonate somebody or a vendor that you trust or you believe it's from the right person. For example, let's say somebody sends you a tax return and you use H&R Block to file your taxes, right? But it may not be really from them, but you says, hey, can you confirm that this is your tax return information? Please log into this account to enter your password or verify your credential. And now that information is stolen and your account now can be taken by the hacker, and the hacker can log into the actual tax filing. Then once they have access to that, they take that and say, oh, hey, my bank account to deposit the return is this account, not the one that I put on there.
Yep. Yeah. And then suddenly your return is gone, right? It's taken. The IRS can't really do anything about that.
That's correct.
That's really frustrating.
Yeah. So for individuals and stuff, oftentimes one of the things that I find is they compromise a lot because they search on something and they click on a website and then get a pop and says, your computer is out of date. You need to click on this to download and update your virus. It's unprotected. And because of that, they get a pop-up number. And they say, call this number. And then they end up calling. And we have many people who call those numbers And now they give access to somebody who they have no idea who it is, but they trust that it's from some vendor that they believe is Microsoft.
Yeah.
And then allowing them to say, oh, yeah, log onto my computer, update it. Oh, before we can update, can you enter your credit card? We just need to process the subscription for this.
And then there's no value that's given.
There's
Right?
not a lot of value. Now they stay on your system and you don't know through what they're doing because now they gain access in the back door.
Right. They take over your account. I remember watching a podcast with a white hat hacker whose job it is to find vulnerabilities and then report them to companies as essentially kind of like a bounty hunter, right? That's what he is. He's a bounty hunter. And he had not even a thumb drive. It was just a cable. It was a USB cable that you might plug into your computer. And this USB cable didn't actually work as a USB cable, but when you plug it in, it generated 8,000 keystrokes per minute and installed malware software onto your computer within a second. Right?
Yeah.
And it's just so much.
That's exactly why one of the things that we often help business do is understand what is their baseline security. When somebody asks us and say, oh, can you help us manage our IT or company? I said, okay, before we need to know what kind of security measures do you have in place today? And we conduct what we call a cybersecurity risk assessment.
You did one on my company.
Yeah.
And your software broke 193 passwords in less than 10 minutes on 4 different machines. And it was only installed on 2 of those machines. It broke passwords on machines that were just connected to the network.
And that's why we believe that, like you, a lot of businesses have information that they don't realize that exists on the system.
You know, what's interesting to me is that I went to a conference in Las Vegas last month. And I was going there for education. And my wife said, I'm going to tag along because I want to go on vacation. So she invited a girlfriend and all the kids came. And I went to work at the conference and they stayed back. And the last day that we were there was another conference that was starting at that hotel, which was a black hat conference. Now, these are aggressive hackers who are not hired by a business and they're not there for bounties. They are there to take things, right? That's what a black hat hacker is, right? So it was a black hat conference. So I told my wife, turn off your cell phone. And I turned my cell phone off. Now, there were other people who were on some device in the hallway and one person on a computer. No way. Because those hackers would get access to everything within some range, right? No thanks.
That's the scary part is when people have the intent to go after you and you are an easier target than someone else, they're going to come after you first.
Of course.
If you make your business harder and a lot more, like you mentioned, that person that tried to access the computer and the data, you had MFA or 2-factor authentication, they go, okay, I'm just going to go after the email because the email didn't have that in place. So imagine a lot of businesses don't have that. They go, oh, hey, your business is easier to target. And small businesses are more at risk than larger business because they go, well, you're not putting all the security measure in place. And by the time you think about it, it's maybe after the fact that something has already happened.
Yeah. So to kind of go back to what you do, you provide cybersecurity and IT for law firms. Is that right?
That's correct. So we do work with law firms and other small businesses, mostly because we believe that you guys have a lot of sensitive information.
And lawyers don't use a lot of specialized software like hospitals do, right? So hospitals have their own designated IT and they're big enough. They can have their own IT. So you do outsourced IT because if a law firm is big enough, they're going to have their own internal IT. So you focus on the small to medium size business, not the big multi-office businesses, but small to medium because they're not big enough to hire internal IT and you have the expertise to help multiple companies.
That's correct. So we typically focus on businesses between 10 to 50 employees.
Okay.
And those businesses, like you said, they don't hire or they don't have the resource to hire in-house. And we even found some companies believe they have IT support internally, but it's usually an office manager who can order hardware, order license and stuff. But their specialty is not about securing the environment. It's about, oh, hey, a new hire just started. Let me go order a computer, buy the license, and give it to the user to get started.
Right. I remember one day I was working with another attorney on a case and I was expecting something from him. And I got a weird email from his email address at about 9 a.m. one day. And the email said, "Here is the item you've been waiting on from me. Click this link." And it was weird. It didn't sound like it was from his email, and the signature wasn't exactly correct. But I was waiting on it. So I called, so I emailed back and I asked, "Is this the thing that we've been working on?" And I got a one-liner back, said, "Yes, download it now." So I clicked it and nothing happened. It opened some Adobe Acrobat PDF. There was a link in the PDF and I stopped. And it turned out that he had been hacked. That email had gone out to every single one of his attorney contacts, right?
Yeah.
So nothing happened on my end. I happened to know the IT guy who helped them. And I think he was shut down for about 3 days, that lawyer. If an individual person, not an attorney, not a professional, but an individual person is hacked, they can expect to be down for more than 3 or 4 days. Is that right?
Yes. I think one of the things unique about individuals, they often use what I call free email services, whether you're using Gmail, Yahoo, or one of those one from Comcast, for example. What's hard about that is you don't have a lot of ways to protect yourself because you use those security free email services. You can't put, spam filtering. You can't go and make changes if something happens. Your account out compromised. Either way, you may have to set up a brand new email address because you don't have control of that domain or that company name. You can't go and tell Google, says, "Hey, my email's been hacked. Can you help me block this users from accessing my account now?"
Yeah, there are ways to protect those accounts, but oftentimes people don't use it, right? Yeah. I mean, with my personal Google account, I have dual factor authentication plus I have a sign-in passkey.
Yes.
So it's sign-in passkey means that it's a code kept by a third party that's trusted. So you have to go through 4 steps to get into my personal Google account. You have to do username, password, multi-factor authentication, and then the passkey. So you need all 4 to get into mine. Right. So there's 4 steps. So it's much more secure than even a lot of other accounts. But I don't know if many people would take those kind of steps.
That's true. It's just that it's not something that they go, "Oh, I should do this because it's kind of fun." It's not something that's fun for most people to do. And something they don't see. Sometimes they go, "Why?" They ask themselves, "Why? I never been hacked before. Why would I go through the trouble of doing this?"
Yeah. Well, let's ask a different question then, because we've been talking a lot about why people should do. What steps do people actually do to secure their own personal devices to make sure that it's much less, if a hacker wants to get in, they're probably getting in. But how do people make themselves less desirable, more difficult than just the general everyday user? How do they do that?
That's a good point. So oftentimes we tell people, sure, the device you use, whether it's your Windows PC, your Mac laptop, your iPhone, or your Android phone, make sure you're running the latest version. Update that, okay? Because a lot of those updates are there because they are providing fixes that include security updates to minimize the risk of getting compromised. Use software that are supported. So oftentimes we use Zoom, we use any software on your computer. Use the one that are supported because often those support also includes updates and stuff. Most people don't update their software. They go, "Oh, I don't need to. It's been working." And it's hard to do if something that you do maybe once in a while. That's the reason why individuals have to at least open it up and say, "Oh, do I really need this software anymore? If I don't need it, let's just uninstall it." iPhone and Android phones are the other thing because you use it a lot. You should keep that secure. And we have a lot of apps on those phones. Right? Ask yourself, do I use this anymore? Is there a reason why it's on here? And if you don't use it, maybe it's time to just uninstall it so you don't have to keep them update or worry about it.
There's another feature that I talk to my kids about sometimes, that if you're not paying for a service, you are the service, right?
Yeah.
If you're not paying someone for what they do for you on some sort of application, then you are the product, right? So a free game that you download on your phone or your device, whatever it is, ads are going to pop up. Why are they popping up? Because the company has to sell something and they're selling ad space to you, to access you, the user, right?
That's correct.
So Gmail's okay, but I don't use
Uh-huh.
Gmail for business accounts because I don't
Mhm.
want anything mined, right?
Yeah.
I don't want my client's information to be used for education. I think that's a violation. So instead I use a proprietary account, right? Well, I
Mhm.
pay for that so that it's not mined specifically, right? So it's
That's
those
correct.
kind of things. Yeah.
The Just a few other things that I mentioned is don't share too many personal information online. So if you are on social media and stuff, share what you do, but not where you live and your kids and all the stuff where you're at. Don't share information that can allow somebody to piece all the information about you. Okay. Share your profession and stuff that somebody would find on your website. Don't like share too much data about your birthday and all these other things that people say, oh, you just told me all the information I can use to now impersonate you. And I would say don't share the other thing is your kids' information.
Yeah. It's actually really interesting. My kids are growing up with iPhones and we went to a friend's house when my youngest child was 3 and she reached up and tried to touch the TV as if it was a touchscreen because that's what she knew. And the answer
Uh-huh.
was no, baby, it's not a touchscreen, right? They're growing up with this, and I have a preteen. The preteen has friends
Uh-huh.
who have YouTube channels,
Yeah.
and they have YouTube channels where they go online and they dance and they show themselves, and people know where they go to school now, and people know
Yeah.
where they live. And my
Mhm.
answer was, my daughter asked me, can I start a YouTube channel? And my answer was yes, but I have 2 rules. Number 1, you can't show your face or tell where you live or where you go to school. Number 2, number 1, you can't show your face. And number 2, you can't tell people personal information about you or use your own personal voice. It has to be changed
Mhm.
because we don't want people to know about you because you will be targeted. And she said, I don't understand. And my answer was, when you get a phone or a device, you get access to the whole world,
Yeah.
but the whole world gets access to you too. And I just want my kids to be safe, right? And their friends, they all have YouTube channels and they're doing dances and all these things and they're getting whatever likes and things. And my answer is totally cool, whatever they want to do, but not.
It's really, I think, having that discussion with your kids and your family is crucial because it's important they know why you have to protect your personal information. And that's what people are selling. All this information is about you, and what Facebook is selling and stuff is your information that you give to them.
Exactly. And it's the hardest thing. Well, Matthew, I've really enjoyed talking to you today. There's a couple of questions that I always wanted to ask people. And one of them is, what's your favorite book?
I've been reading a lot of different books, and one of it is more about just some of it is self improvement and stuff. One of the last one that I really liked was Who Not How by a coach Dan Sullivan and stuff. He talks about when you're trying to get something done, it's don't figure out how to do something, figure out who can help you get those things done. And if you can do that, you can leverage somebody else who's already have experience to help you get it done.
Right. It sounds a lot like Dan Martell's book, which is called Buy Back Your Time. Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Where you find the problem and you can either figure out how to find it. But there's another author that I like who said, if you're a person or a business and you're gonna find out how to do something that you need to do, you can either pay to train yourself, you could pay to train someone else, or
Mhm.
you could pay someone who's already trained, right? Same thing.
It's as a small business, I struggle with that. And here's why. As you know, we have a limited amount of time and we have limited amount of resource that we can use. And I go, by the time I ask somebody what I need, sometimes I go, is it easier for me to figure it out myself? Or is this something I'm going to struggle and don't do so well in that I need to consider just getting help?
I totally get that. Every small business has that same limitation, right?
Mhm.
I guess a small business wouldn't have that limitation if they did a very small number of things and they didn't provide services to the public, like a real estate investment company.
Mhm.
Somebody that has 5 or 6 different pieces of real estate, maybe up to 10. They don't really need to outsource a whole lot. They can manage it themselves. They don't need to answer that question. But at some point, it goes beyond the founder, goes beyond even the manager, right?
Mhm.
And really, it's about hiring the right people.
Yeah. And that's why I feel like to scale your business to grow, I often figure out, okay, you somehow know like what you want to do, but then say, okay, I need somebody to really help me fine tune it. And eventually, if you want to take over that role, maybe you train them to teach you how to do it if you want and hire somebody. But in the beginning, you may have to hire somebody to really help you
Yeah.
do things, just like we go to school for a reason.
I remember being on an airplane a couple months ago, and I sat next to the president of Taco Bell. And
Okay.
he's a nice man. He was on the phone with the president of Starbucks. Obviously, they knew each other. And so I asked him my question that I was struggling with at that moment. I was going to a mastermind to talk about marketing. And I asked him, do
Mhm.
you know anything about marketing? He said, no, I'm sorry, I don't. And the scale of his business had gone to the point that he had experts under him because, of course, it's a multi-billion dollar business. And he had experts at every level. And his job was to organize information and organize effort, right? And find strategic vision. That was his job. And so if that's the job that you want, then you have to build to that job, right?
Yeah.
But, some people who are founders or some people who have their own business, they want a job. I have plenty of friends who have small businesses and they just want the job that they're in. And the answer is totally that's where you can, and that's fine. It just
Yeah.
depends on where you want to go.
And that's the thing is sometimes I think we all have different journeys in where we are. And some season, I ask myself, I go, if I knew marketing as good as I knew IT, I think my business may be a different place right now.
Probably. That's the problem with IT professionals and attorneys both, is that IT professionals and attorneys train as technical operators, right? I'm a technical operator. I operate in a very difficult field, and there's a lot of detail that makes it difficult for other people to appreciate whether it's important, right? The people that do
Yeah.
appreciate whether it's important, they'll come and that's fine.
Yeah.
But it also means that I believe that I can figure out every other issue, and I certainly can, but do I want to take the time to do it?
That's the thing where the who not how talks about. It's like, do you want to trade your time for doing this? And you may not get there, but the question is, that why you want to hire somebody who can save you time and improve what your end goal is not. I guess the end goal of marketing is not so you can learn how to market, it's so you can get more clients, right?
Well, that's right. That's right. The end goal of marketing, but it's also education, right? Because I remember reading a
Okay.
book about marketing that explained the difference between marketing and sales. And marketing is explaining to people what you do, why you do it, and the value of the result. And sales is explaining to people how their problem fits your solution and whether it's actually a fit, right?
Okay.
And taken from that perspective, it actually kind of makes it really easy. And so you're right, marketing is there to educate the public about what you do. And sales
Mhm.
is there to actually kind of pare down or show whether one person's problem can actually be solved by your solution, right?
Yes.
And I remember speaking to 6 different marketing companies in the last month, just about different things. And we shut all of them down except one
Okay.
because the solution that they were offering was not the problem that we were trying to solve.
I see.
So we have, I don't know, on average about 60, maybe 70 people who call the firm every single month asking for
Mhm.
services. And out
Okay.
of those people, there's some of them who we just simply cannot help. And
Mhm.
so what we've tried to do is we tried to change our messaging to those clients who actually we can help, change our
Yeah.
messaging to focus on those people rather than having someone call, I'm sorry, we can't help you. Let me give you
I know.
referrals to other people. I'm happy to do that. Absolutely happy.
Yes.
If you want to be my client, my network is your network. I'm happy. Yeah, I've referred people to you, Matthew. I think
Mhm.
3 or
Yes, I
4 different,
appreciate that. Yeah.
yeah. But but the simple answer is that if I can't provide a solution, I can't, right?
Mm.
And sometimes I'm not for everybody. That's okay.
I agree. And that's one of the reasons why we also try to focus on special verticals as well. Just like, hey, my solution, I can serve any small business, but at the same time, I may not be of value to every small business because of what we do.
Understand.
So we want to provide in a way that I go compatible. Is the solution you said is going to be fit, like solve the problem they're having, and that's why we focus on attorneys and accountants because we believe that we can safeguard their information and protect their reputation from getting hacked.
Right. Well, Matthew, we're almost out of time here, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to tell people how to reach you, to tell people first how to reach you, and then finally one thing. If people could take one thing away from today, what would you want them to take away?
They can reach me on our website, eSudo.com, esudo.com, and you can contact us there. The phone number is there at 408-216-5800. If there's one thing I would recommend people do is think about, I would say, understand the risk of what your business is, because I would say most people run or built a business or the information that they have over the years. It's important that they protect that, right? It's better to invest or try to figure out what you need to protect now than find out after the fact. Plan ahead, just like an estate planning. To avoid probate, people go and plan to make sure they have something in place to avoid that before a person dies, right? And to me, I say security as well. Cybersecurity is people are coming. It's just a matter, if you're an easier target, they're going to come after you first. So
There's also an
just
interesting
plan ahead.
thing. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No.
There's also an interesting thing about the tool versus the use, right? Because anybody can go online and they can download a trust, but are they
That's
going to
right.
receive the list and assistance with incorporating that list of all the things that they actually need to do to properly use the tool? You can buy a hammer.
That's
Anybody can
true.
buy a hammer, right? But
Yeah.
do you have the 15 years of experience that you need to actually properly use it and build the house, right? No.
That's true.
So it's really knowing the right questions to ask in my mind. Do you know what questions to ask?
Very
And that's really what the professional is there for. The professional is there to guide you along and asking the right questions. And then if you don't know how to implement those questions, then the professional is there to actually do it for
That's where the guide, having proper guidance is important. Just why we have coaches when you play sports, there's coaches to help them guide you, like how to be better. And for businesses, that's where we also have, like you said, you can go buy Microsoft 365 for your email, but most people don't realize how many places you have to set up to make yourself secure.
you. Yep. It is arduous. Yeah, but that's okay. We actually had to, somebody sent us a subpoena last month where basically I prepared an estate plan. Now the kids are arguing about something else, not the estate plan, but they asked me for all the emails related to that. Well, I had an employee who had left and we had locked that email account. Well, now we still need to provide the emails, right?
Wow.
So it took me 2 days to get into that blocked email account just to provide the data. It needed to be done, and it's okay. I wish them the best of luck, but it was arduous. It took a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing is, I'm glad that you kept it and you realize how important it is to keep these communication to preserve it. But most people may or may not realize they have to do that.
Yeah. It's just a question of whether they manage it themselves. And just like you, I cannot manage this myself. It's too big. I could figure it out. I have enough IT background that I could figure it out. I just don't want to.
Yeah. That may not be the best use of your time, because as the CEO, you probably have a lot other priorities to do than IT.
Yeah, our priorities right now is that we're spinning up client seminars. So I have 3 seminars that we're giving next month, and that's what I'm putting a lot of attention to. And so all the other things are kind of armed out to other people, and that's fine. That's what it's supposed to be.
Okay.
So so here at my firm, we set up systems. I train my people really well so that they can do their jobs extremely well, and then the attorney does what the attorney needs to do.
I think if you have a very clear process, it helps a lot, because sometimes the process is most businesses, like you mentioned, have clear process, and those processes sometimes are evolving because it's not defined roles.
Right. Yeah, it's hard to define roles when the owner operator knows how to do everything. And that's what it is. Matthew, you and I have gone on for a long time. We've talked for hours before. We can keep going forever, but we have to close out. So I want to thank everyone who has reached this far into the podcast, having Matthew and I talk ad nauseum about things that we're interested in. Please follow Keys to Your Legacy podcast everywhere that you can find podcasts. It's YouTube, Amazon, Spotify, Apple, wherever. Go ahead and leave a comment below about what part of this conversation you think we got wrong, or something that you want us to cover in a later episode. And stay tuned so that we can help you develop the keys to your legacy. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
You've been tuning into The Keys to Your Legacy with your host, Elijah Keys. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, keyslawgroup.com. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others.